Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Midday Western U.S. Regional Forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. We're going to begin by looking back over the last 7 days because of the deeper trough that was across the west coast of the United States did bring in a lot of precipitation. As you can see here, we had quite a bit of heavy rainfall that ran up against the Sierra Nevada and then into the northern ranges in California. But outside of that, we had a narrow corridor in through here where we saw some very heavy rainfall in parts of eastern Washington, Oregon, getting into Idaho and Montana, including some pretty nasty thunderstorms went racing here into parts of Montana when just thinking about the Pacific Northwest on the whole. As we look forward in this forecast, it's important for us to understand how much that rainfall plus what else we got earlier this month has really changed our soil moisture. So this is a map that just again shows you the difference over the month, how much we've improved or lost moisture. And really for parts of Northern California through the Pacific Northwest, we've made a pretty sizable improvement here, which is good overall. What was surprising was that this moisture was, I think, too little too late. In other words, the latest drought monitor, which was released here, taking data through May 19th, still shows us a very similar picture overall. In fact, just to show you how much it changed over the last week, this is what those numbers look like. So overall, we only had some one class improvement right here, but the rest of the Pacific Northwest really stayed, and Northern California really stayed with the kind of drought that we had been seeing. So with that as a backdrop, I want to talk to you about where this pattern's going. So let's just animate forward our troughs and ridges. The deep trough that was over us moves out, and behind it, throughout this weekend and early next week, a sizable ridge moves into place. The big questions come about day 8 through day 15 as to whether or not that trough you see developing there, not only first of all here off of the west coast, but the second one here in the Gulf of Alaska, do materialize to essentially give us flow at some point that comes in like that. That would be a critical change for us as we start off the month of June, because in the near term, we do have some pretty sizable temperature stresses that are going to be coming in as we've been talking about here. So just take a look at it. This is the last 7 days, okay? So going back in time, over the last 7 days, where that trough has really been in place, we've seen cooler than average weather across much of the west and Pacific Northwest. Over the next 5 days, as the trough exits, that's when we're going to really start to see the rebounding of the temperatures. So the cool bias that you see here right now is really mainly in the next couple of days. You'll see that here in just a few moments. And some of the heat that's coming in behind this is really going to be a massive jump over what we have been seeing. In fact, Weather Service here, National Weather Service, has already begun to issue its heat advisories and heat warnings, excessive heat watches down here in parts of the desert Southwest, already starting to get concerned about where this is going to be going. So with that heat that's coming in, I'm starting to get concerned about our evaporation rates. And we've seen this map kind of slowly evolve here recently such that we have a wide sector that's going to be seeing about 2 to 3 inches of water evaporate per week down here in parts of the Southwest. And getting up into the Central Valley of California, those numbers again creeping from 1.5 to 2.5 inches of evaporation. Same thing for parts of the Columbia Basin as well, and the Snake River Valley with numbers there sitting about 1.5 inches or so in total evaporation. So the heat that is coming on is really going to take these numbers and skyrocket them. And I'm working on some new products for you here. Got a great suggestion about a precipitation minus evaporation plot. So I'm working on it, and as soon as I get it done, I'll be excited to share it with you. So near-term temperatures, we're still cool though. So we're going to get today on Friday, a lot of the areas seeing temperatures that are 10, on some locations up to 20 degrees cooler than average. I'm talking about this area right here in the Pacific Northwest. But as you'll see, the temperatures are going to moderate quickly. So this is Friday's highs, and the color coding is departure from normal. As we work our way into Saturday, see the trough move to the east? It just shifted this direction. And now for the Memorial Day weekend, Saturday versus Sunday, the warm-up really starts to crank here. So we're going to go from highs here in the 70s to pretty quickly highs in the 90s in the Central Valley of California, and 70s and upper 70s returning up here into the Pacific Northwest. Now, as we get out into next week, watch, here's Monday's high temperatures. A lot of 90s, high 90s in the Central Valley. We then see, as we get into Tuesday, this is where the threat really starts to move in. We're going to be seeing temperatures in here possibly cracking the century mark, and that really is one thing that increases our evapotranspiration. There's going to be a lot of sunshine beating down on this as the broader ridge sets in here. And so that's Tuesday. This is now into Wednesday. It is the same features going on here. getting into Thursday and even out beyond that. In fact, let's just go look beyond that quickly here. This is day 5 through 10. We are going to be seeing temperature anomalies. Now, this is measured in Celsius, by the way. Temperature anomalies here that are going to be somewhere between 6 and 9 degrees above average Celsius. So we're talking about much above average temperatures just skyrocketing in the west as this ridge builds in. The question becomes out day 10 through 15, because you can see they want to return things to normal here as the jet stream possibly does something a bit more like that. So broader trough here, trough sitting on the west coast, and maybe even a trough sitting here in the Gulf of Alaska, with the ridge now running basically along the front range of the Rocky Mountains. Okay, I have a little bit of doubt in this, and I want to kind of share with you what I'm thinking about here in a few moments. One thing that we do know is that this particular pattern is a drier one. So if you look here, this is the Weather Prediction Center. It's basically its projections here through the next week, and the heavy precipitation you see right in this quarter, that's still coming today. So this is the system that's exiting right now and getting on out of here. So behind it, things are quite dry, whereas the south central United States really starts to crank up. But I want you to keep an eye down here in a few moments, especially in parts of Arizona and New Mexico, as I do believe with the ridge that is developing, we're going to get some monsoonal-like precipitation. But certainly when we look out over the next 10 days from the operational models, so this is just the operational European, outside of maybe parts of coastal Oregon and Washington and the system that's leaving right now, things are going to be very dry across much of the west and the northwest, okay? So I want to show you kind of a broader view of this. I think this is spectacular here. Look at what the jet stream's doing. Can you see it here? You can see the path of the heaviest precipitation, and therefore you can notice where over the next 10 days we are going to be ridging out. It's right here. Everything breaks around it. See that? So the flow is very much responding to the high pressure that's developing there. And I just thought you'd like to see this northern hemisphere view of total precipitation through the next 10 days. So my call into question these maps. So this is June 1st, valid on June 1st. The ridge is sitting right in through here. And the European ensemble brings the trough into this area, all right? So when I'm trying to understand if this is really going to be a robust solution, I notice that this is a 5-wave pattern, maybe even a 6-wave pattern. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But what I'm curious about here is even if we should count what's going on right there. Now, why I'm bringing this up is because usually high wave count patterns tend to move progressively. In other words, they tend to go. They don't tend to block up. But remember, it's the regional wavelength that we're most careful of. In other words, are the waves near us long or are they short? Short waves move fast. Long waves are slow or even retrograde at times. So I went to the operational models to see what they're saying. This is the European. It has the trough a little bit further west and the ridge as well a little bit further west. So if you used just the operational models, this would suggest that the models may be overdoing the week 2 precipitation by keeping this trough farther to the west. So we're going to watch that. What about the GFS? It's got a much weaker trough in its ensemble in this area, a much different trajectory, but it is one that's trying to bring the flow around like this, which could increase precipitation here. It's going to be all about where this ridge is with respect to that trough axis as we get out into the beginning of June. So what I'm trying to convey here is that there's some uncertainty once we get out past this point as to what the precipitation patterns in June are going to look like. So let's at least get an idea here from our ensembles. GFS ensemble left, European ensemble right. You can see how they're both trying to keep a sector here with wetter than average conditions. Now remember, wetter than average for the first week of June is still not much precipitation. So this is our dry season. What I do want you to take note of is where that ridge is currently sitting in the models. Remember, it's somewhere in here. We are seeing moisture advection from this direction that's going to be getting into the Four Corner states. Very monsoonal-like thunderstorm activity, which was what we honestly want to start to see. We want to see that kicking up in the month of June so that we do not have what we had last summer in parts of Arizona, for example. So we're going to keep an eye on this very carefully. Longer term, as we finish up this video, this is the new June outlook. I think a lot of what you see right in through here is primarily driven by what we're seeing currently in the week 2. And with that ridge coming in, you can see the wetter than average conditions in the Four Corner states. But you see the reflection of that with the much above average temperature forecast for the western United States, which we've now seen showing up in the models for a while. So it appears that we are getting into some pretty serious summer heat. And just released yesterday, NOAA's in agreement with this as well, not only for June, but for June, July, and August. On the left, this was their brand new update released on the 21st, suggesting much above average temperatures here, a 70% probability of being above average temperatures here across the western United States. And they're keeping parts of the Pacific Northwest on the drier side of things, which would suggest that the flow of the jet stream is going to do something a bit more like this through summer. That's what they're currently projecting at this point. Now, I made a case in my long-range videos that knowing exactly where that ridge axis is going to sit is one of the most challenging forecast aspects of long-range meteorology when we think about summer in the United States. Because if you shift this just, 800 miles that way, all of a sudden now we're dealing with better onshore flow, more thunderstorms in the northwest, and a cooler pattern. You shifted 800 or 1,000 miles this direction, and what we've then got is extreme heat up the west coast and massive drought conditions. So this is kind of sitting in the balance here. We got to keep an eye on it, and I'll do that for you, okay? So I hope you all have a great Memorial Day weekend. I'll talk to you again on Monday morning, okay? Have a good one. Thank you.